Aum Sairam. Hara Hara Shankara, Jaya Jaya Shankara. Episode 24. Shri Mahaswami, the Sage with Eyes of Light, the Diary of a Seeker of Truth. Dr.Serge Demetrian. Dear devotees, now we shall listen to the second section of Part 2 of this divine book under the subtitle The Lotus Pond. Karveti Nagar, 30th August 1971. The Ocean of Absolute Light. A second major event was waiting to happen. The activity of widening, purifying, and strengthening my physical eyes continued for the next 2 days. On the morning of the third day, after a peaceful sleep on the carved granite stairs at the reservoir, I came to know that Sri Mahaswami had already left for the Venugopala temple. I hurried, hoping to find him there, but I arrived too late as he was just coming out of the temple in order to return to the hermitage. I strode behind him among some 20 other people along the kilometer of road up to the hermitage, trying to be as near to him as the rules permitted. From the beginning of that walk, I understood that Sri Mahaswami had the intention to look at me. He stopped under different pretexts and, with his eyelids largely open, he gazed at me for a long time and with growing intensity. I understood this play which he often utilized when he wanted to bless me. In these cases, I look into his eyes as if they were two wells full of the water of the paradise. I do not lose any opportunity to open my heart to him through the windows of my own eyes. This time I observed that he did not allow anybody to interject themselves between us. I was very near to him in that ineffable atmosphere that encircles him and follows him when he walks like the tail of a comet. After several stops, we reached the hermitage of the Lotus Pond. It must have been about 9 a.m. when Sri Mahaswami halted for one last time, but before entering the hut, he changed his mind. He turned and ordered a traditional scholar of the mutt who was in his entourage to come near. He was a tall and thin elderly pandit, a pleasant person who unfortunately stuttered severely. The man was skillfully placed by Swamiji between himself and me. Then Sri Mahaswami raised one of those complicated doctrinal questions of which he possesses the secret, and the Pandit launched into an elaborated explication in Tamil, stammering with great difficulty in spite of his obvious good intentions. I stood just in front of Sri Mahaswami and could perfectly see him from a close distance over the left shoulder of the Pandit. I could even keep my eyes in the same horizontal plane as his eyes. My hands in Anjali, I repeated a holy name and concentrated on the point between his eyebrows. Sri Mahaswami seemed to have waited just for this, taking advantage of a moment when some 20 people were around who were held spellbound by the exposition of the genial stutterer, whose stream of words exploded again and again after each agonizing interval. Swamiji went so near to him that he almost could have touched the barrier shoulder which invariably came between Swamiji and me. From my side, I did the same. For 15 to 20 seconds, we were in parallel, separated by just some 30 centimeters. His eyes were wide open. They were two blue globes spreading fine rays. They seemed less brilliant perhaps because we were both in broad daylight. However, Swamiji irises, usually of brown color, had lost their color and were rendered transparent by the azure ethereal radiation coming from inside Swamiji. I was able to see clearly that in place of the black pupils, there were the two spots of a blinding clarity, two living lightning rods which were ready to burst out. These two light serpents were kept at bay by the same will that had projected them. Otherwise, my poor eyes would have been doubtlessly long since shattered into splinters of glass. This interval of 15 to 20 seconds was enough. A peaceful light arose in the center of my heart from where it flooded the entire body like a liquid cloud. I was suffused by a feeling of inexpressible happiness. I dwelt in a statue foreign to me, which first stood there, then moved free of laws by which I was now no longer bound. In these cases, when this happens, the reasoning mind, manas, still works and knows that one should not move but concentrate on the inner vision in the heart, only repeating the name of the Guru or a sacred formula. That is, if one is still capable of remembering something. This time, hardly had I directed my attention to the heart when I observed how the peaceful light which had invaded me was slowly strengthening itself. After having filled the chest and stopped the breathing, it diffused itself without encountering any obstacle throughout the entire body. I had still the time to wonder how I could stay alive without breathing. The limbs and the organs lost their structure and became a mass of faint azure light. I tried to identify them, but these familiar objects which habitually formed my body were no longer in their usual places. This state did not worry me. I was telling myself, if one could live without the body, it would be one load less. The head was the portion which was the slowest to disappear. It finally perished as the last. I remained alone with a vague feeling of individuality without any precise location. The only perception was that of Sri Mahaswami, a kind of pillar, an entity made of goodness and stability, that was on the other side of the shoulder of the Pandit. From somewhere there suddenly appeared a question. What shall I do now? One can stay as such, a lazy thought suggested. It appeared, I do not know from where, and was located in an indeterminate spot. And if one would progress, you know well that it is possible, said another thought, a more courageous one. The lazy one, not admitting defeat, called an ally to help. It was the thought of fear. What will you gain standing here alone among unknown people, and you will fall and fracture a leg? Sri Mahaswami will be displeased if you make a spectacle with these departures for the infinite. The frail idea of I hesitated, and then it turned towards Swamiji. He is still there. If he had wanted me to return, he would have shown how. As he did not, I therefore dive. Before saying goodbye to this beautiful world, as in this case, one never knows what will happen. I still heard the high-pitched Tamil outburst coming in torrents from the stammering scholar. I had forgotten him, although he had continued his peroration right in front of my nose. Every idea of a body and every other thought evaporated. In the heart, where everything started, the gentle faint azure light became in succession orange, yellow, then liquid gold, and more an ethereal white, until it impassively glided towards the ocean of the luminous presence. The minute I was standing on the shore of this waveless immensity, the shore, or better still, an island or a continent floating on the ocean appeared in an inexplicable manner as the ocean spread up, down, in front, behind, everywhere. We could call it the immensity of an ineffable luminosity, but it was beyond the luminous that can only be pointed to by the term light, as it cannot be compared to anything else. The one characteristic of this immensity was that it existed. It resulted in a feeling of ultimate joy. I felt that I had arrived at the limit of all knowledge, as if I had reached the end of reason and the expression of all that can or could have been conceived at the end of everything. The perfect stability in the felicity, as if the world, the worlds, the universe, with its infinite variety of forms and relations from its origin and beyond that too, behind and also in front, in the time and out of time, everything had been justified by the existence of this immensity, the ocean of absolute light. The onlooker, I, was reduced in dimension to a mere idea that hurriedly plunged in the smooth immensity of luminous felicity and was dissolved without trace. It had found its origin, the primordial reality of which it had been but a speck. Thus, the I had perished. Was it forever or for a fraction of the human time scale? What happened was a mystery of which nobody was there to bear witness about. Who could have said it, and for whom and for what? Finally, a decision has been taken. By whom? This also remained unknown, and then the temporary was preferred. The idea of I had to reappear. It reappeared. The I thought, the thought of an individuality that signified the separation from the oceanic immensity, manifested itself as a form of froth that arises in the waters of light. This particle was carried away by discrete waves to a shore, which was the same place it came from. A shore which could have been from a continent or an island, gliding on this ocean of the infinite, both of them being also in the form of froth, though slightly more hardened. They were floating in it like the stars and the galaxies in the immensity without the limits of the interstellar space. How approximate and vague are these terms! Whatever it may be, the grain of naked individuality seemed possessing nothing else than the consciousness of its own existence. It was different, apparently separate from the infinite from where it just came out. Little by little it reappeared, and on it hung in successive strata the old reason with its memory and the ideas of good and bad. Then the sense of judgment with its doubts and convictions, with its law of logic, then the humble instinctive mind which silently takes care of the corporeal factory of the organism. And of what was to become the body, the consciousness of the head, which was the last to disappear, now was the first to come back, followed one by the five senses. These began to appear first in their subtle form, then quickly sustained their existence and reached the sense organs. Next appeared the tenuous forms of the limbs, culminating in their gross manifestation. The air started moving in the nose and the chest puffed out. I observed that during the journey that just ended, I had forgotten to breathe. That means I had rejected everything, the body as well as the mind, like some cumbersome clothes, and there I took back everything that I had abandoned. The memory returned and submitted me its report. I was standing close behind the left shoulder of the Pandit. Swamiji stood on the other side of this left shoulder. I was in the middle of a group of about 20 people, dressed in the fashion of the south, on the western shore of the Lotus Pond, near the Hermitage at 9 in the morning. I took a chance to open the eyes. When did I close them? I am on the same spot without anybody around me. The sun is high in the sky and it should be near noon, which means that this one had been standing here for about 3 hours. I am protected from the heat pouring down from the sky by the shade of coconut leaves on the north side of the hermitage. Sri Mahaswami had stopped in the shade right at the very beginning, intentionally, I am sure. I try a look on my right side, on my left. Swamiji had retired to his hut. When? I could not say. 2 or 3 people from the group are still there but are farther away. They talk among themselves and feign to ignore me. I observed that I was standing the whole time. Why did I not fall? I try to move my legs, they respond. I slowly leave, very slowly towards the place where I am staying. The eyes of Sri Mahaswami are accompanying me in the head, in the heart, and round me, on the vegetation that was passing on the hedge that lined the dusty and scorching trail. Their presence helps me to bear the heat that is burning my naked feet. If only I could never more forget his true eyes, his eyes of light. Devotees, we shall continue to listen to the lotus pond in the coming episode, bowing at the holy feet of the Gurus. Aum Sairam. Hara Hara Shankara, Jaya Jaya Shankara.